Thank you, and welcome to our council meeting. The first thing on our agenda is a presentation from the Growing Soil and Water Conservation District.
Mr. Mayor and members, thank you for the opportunity to come and talk to you guys. I just wanted to come and just thank the council and the City of Baxter staff for the work with purchasing the Southwest Baxter property. I know it's been a long haul project, but I just wanted to publicly acknowledge the work that your staff and the council has done to protect that area. So it's a partnership. It's been a partnership with the Nature Conservancy as well as the Conservation Fund and then Camp Brickley. But I just want to say that Josh Doty's done a great job of representing the city on this project and has been crucial to this project. And I'm not originally from the area, but when I first moved up here, people used to tell me, Baxter didn't plan 371. You guys have probably heard that too. And maybe you guys did plan it, but at least that was always what I heard. And I just feel like this project really exemplifies the ability for the city to think long-term, as well as providing many amenities back to the community at by large. And it's a great opportunity for the city to protect those acres, and then also the lakes and part of the Mississippi River. It's just a great, large habitat complex. And we recognized, or Josh was able to come to our landowner event, and we gave each landowner that came a framed print. So I would like to come and give this to the council. Josh, do you want to come here? Sure. Cool. There you go.
Very nice.
So a long time ago, we were part of an organization called the Greater Area Learning Network, and we got these prints for free from Jerry Radke. This is just a thank you to the work that you guys all did.
Thank you.
So I don't know if you guys have any questions, but it's just more of a
Hold it up for the paper.
Come over here. Hi, Mom. Hi, Mom.
So a lot of work went into this, and a lot of partnerships, but it's just a great piece of property and a great story to tell our community. And then also, I would just say, as a resident of Baxter, I'm excited to be able to utilize that land. And also, I would just say in general, this adds additional opportunity for people to come and recreate in our area. This additional land will provide more opportunities for people to come here and explore and utilize all these other existing trails and open spaces. So, thank you.
Thank you. She's also the chairperson of our Parks Committee, so thank you. We have a representative here from the Nature Conservancy that I'd like to offer a few words, but I'm not going to. A few words, it's kind of a joke. But nice to see you, Todd. We miss you, really, we do. Okay, any additions or changes to the agenda?
Just one, Mayor, from the original agenda that was printed out on Friday, we do have one addition. That is 7W, which is adopt resolution 2022-029, ordering the preparation of the report of Cypress Drive and Douglasburg Improvement Project, municipal project number D213P.
Okay. Did you receive any public comments before?
There were no comments received.
Anybody in the crowd here that would like to address us on any issues that are not on the agenda during public comments? We would listen to those comments at this time. Seeing nothing, we'll drive on. We're on number 7, the consent agenda. The following items are considered non-controversial by staff and are recommended to be read and passed in one motion. Any council person, staff, citizen, or meeting attendee can request one or more items be pulled from the consent agenda. Any item will be pulled and addressed immediately after the passage of the consent agenda. Otherwise, the following items will be passed in one motion. A, approve city council work session minutes from March 15th, 2022. B, approve city council minutes from March 15th, 2022. C, approve city council special minutes from March 22nd, 2022. D, approve the city council special minutes from March 24th, 2022. E, approve city council special minutes from March 29th, 2022. F, approve the payment of bills and finance report. G, approve appointment to the seasonal position of park attendant. H, approve appointment to the seasonal position of roadside mower. I, approve appointment to the seasonal position of streets and utilities maintenance. J, appoint Avery Mulholland to the position of engineering intern. K, adopt resolution number 2022-027, accepting the bid from R.L. Larson Excavating Inc. in the amount of $3,539,601.51 for the 2022 Foley Road, Isle Drive, and Fourthland Road Improvement Project, Municipal Project number 4114. L, approve summary ordinance 2022-002, amending text of Title 5, Tobacco of the Baxter City Code. M, approve transfer of combination on-sale, off-sale intoxicating liquor and Sunday liquor licenses from Three Cheers Hospitality LLC, doing business as Prairie Bay, to Three Cheers Hospitality LLC, doing business as, I'm gonna take a wild guess, Baya Della Atelier, effective April 6, 2022 through June 30th of 2022. And authorize staff to advertise our John Deere 828D snow blower and Honda EB 300C generator on the Minnesota State surplus site. O, approve releasing Central Lakes Crossings Second Edition Development Agreement and approve Central Lakes Crossings Second Edition Stormwater Facilities Maintenance Agreement. P, approve Climate Makers Preventative Maintenance Agreement for the water treatment plant HAVAC system in the amount of $7,922. Q, adopt resolution number 2022-026, adopting assessment for the 2022 full depth reclamation and reconstruction improvements project, improvement number 4422. R, adopt resolution number 2022-025, accepting the bid from Anderson Brothers Construction in the amount of $970,632.24 for the 2022 full depth reclamation and reconstruction improvements project, improvement number 4422. S, approve purchase of handguns with the drug forfeiture funds. T, approve resolution seeking Sourcewell funding for Region 5 Collaborative Law Enforcement Project. U, accept Long Range Planning Commission meeting minutes from March 28th, 2022. V, approve the Whitsitt agreement for professional engineering services for the 2022 Oscar Christopherson Park Capital Improvements Plan in the not to exceed amount of $7,500. And W, adopt resolution 2022-029, ordering preparation of report for the Cypress Drive and Douglas Fir Improvements Project, municipal project number D213P.
Motion to approve the consent agenda.
Motion by Cross.
Second.
Second by Liscilla. Any further discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. And we move down to number 9. Other business 9. 9A, consideration of county request for ARPA contribution to broadband project.
Thank you, Mayor. As council is aware, Crow Wing County has set aside a portion of its American Recovery Plan Act, or ARPA funds, to be invested in improving broadband accessibility throughout the county. Through an RFP process, local vendors submitted proposals for 14 broadband projects for the county's consideration. At the conclusion of its review of the proposals, the county identified or selected 5 projects for funding consideration. Prior to making a final decision on these 5 projects, the county has requested that each of the impacted local units of government contribute a portion of their own ARPA funds towards the project that is located within their jurisdiction to illustrate support, our local support, and to ensure the project reflects local priorities. Exhibit 1 is a letter from the county requesting the city's consideration to financially partner with them on a proposed broadband project in the city of Baxter. The proposed project would install a primary fiber line down Forest View Drive and River Vista Drive to provide residents on the southern end of the neighborhood who currently do not have access to broadband services. A project map is included in your packet as Exhibit 2. The county is requesting that the city contribute $70,000 towards the $288,000 project. As we discussed at a work session last month, the city is scheduled to receive approximately $914,000 federal of the ARPA funds. Finance Director Vasinek had indicated the final rulings from the U.S. Department of Treasury that came late February, early March, outlining what the money can be utilized for. And in that discussion, we provided council with a reflection of, advice or preference that the council or the city staff had regarding the use of ARPA funds. And the next item on the agenda kind of solidifies the use of 700 of those funds, 700,000 of those funds. So before you tonight is the request from the county. Should the council conclude that it wants to financially partner with the county, you may do so by directing staff to dedicate $70,000 of ARPA funds and to direct staff to prepare documentation to make sure that we're compliant with the ARPA requirements. With that, I'll entertain any questions that the council may have of staff.
Council, any questions or comments for Brad? To Brad. The packet was pretty in detail. I think our finance director pointed out some severe issues we have. There's a lot of voices now for that money, and a lot of important voices. It's for us to try to decide what's the best use of it, what reaches the majority of our people. As we spend that, we have the way the water treatment plant is costing a lot of money. We're waiting to see if our insurance company is going to back us up. We don't have that answer yet. There's several different issues way in there. Plus, we've got people that live down there, of course, that want it. We understand. I'm thinking there's some people here that might want to speak to this. If you want to come forward, what's your name and address?
Oh, you want me here?
Sure.
Okay.
Promise on.
My name is Judith Anderson. I live at 6501 Parkview Circle. That is one of the areas involved here. I and my neighbors were alarmed when CTC told us that they had the cease and desist order. Subsequent to this, in fact, for a year and a half, I've talked to John Ward. He had no idea any part of Baxter was without broadband. During COVID, and I don't understand the functionality or mechanics of any of this, but we would lose our internet frequently during the day. Someone told me that it had to do with all the pressure of the kids and people working from home. I don't know if that's real or not. I know it is a little better, but some of the things I've done multiple times, in fact over 20 years, contacting Charter and then Spectrum, being told at a meeting that occurred at CLC last September, well then it changed to Zoom, but anyway, I was the only person from Baxter that participated. Most of the people were from Todd and Morrison County. But they were talking about the governor's placement of importance, which he did right away at the beginning of COVID, that we should all have broadband. Here I am, they said, well, you need to approach Spectrum because Spectrum has a grant. Well, I did, and they said, no, we have a node within 2 blocks of your house, but we will not extend to your street. Back to CTC. CTC said, well, at least while you can hobble along to have any internet at all, you should talk to CenturyLink. I did. CenturyLink said, we have no plans to upgrade, but not only that, according to our records, you already have a line to your house. I said, yes, that's true. CTC said I should just convert my account over to you. Oh, we can't do that. We will only do that if you add a second line. So what am I supposed to do? The fellows from Best Buy who brought my TV set a few months ago said, yes, you may have DirecTV, but you don't want their internet. And with good reason, because even like today, my husband said while I was gone, while it snowed hard, we lost our satellite. So I'm just requesting that even though we are only 2 streets worth of people, that we should not be discounted. That the governor has made the case we should all have this. So please consider it. Thank you.
Thank you for sharing.
She's really good at advocating, I wrote mine down.
My name is Amy Durgas. I live at 6587 Riverwood Road. I had some communication with you all earlier today. I don't know if you got the emails. I know Zach had communicated back with me, so I appreciate you guys taking the time to read them. But much like Judith, I live in the area of Baxter, one of the only areas in Baxter that is not serviced by broadband. I am a resident of Riverwood Road and someone who will benefit from the expansion of this broadband network. Our neighborhood will be cut off from quality, reliable internet as of July of 2022. My household currently receives internet through CTC and is a shared line with CenturyLink. This will end as a result of a cease and desist order, and CenturyLink has informed us that they will no longer be maintaining and/or improving their service in our neighborhood. And a good example of this is the orange plastic bag that acts as my pedestal for the past 4 years, ever since the FedEx man ran it over. CenturyLink has, much to what Judith had said, refused to accept us as a new customer unless we expand our service. And unfortunately, this is unacceptable, and it's leaving residents in our neighborhood in the dark. As of July, we will not be a properly serviced area. Lack of quality internet has really been a struggle for my family. Now, and potentially losing internet service completely is almost difficult to fathom. Internet access is a vital lifeline for families, a subject that has come to the forefront as a result of the recent pandemic. COVID changed the way companies do business. It has changed the way schools teach our children. Working from home is not possible for my husband or I because our upload and download speeds don't support connection to our company's remote server. In addition, we have had to rely on supplemental internet, which we pay for through the school district, to allow our children to access Google Classroom on e-learning days, which, by the way, are no longer snow days. My kids have had to navigate a regular school day in shifts in order to complete their work and interact with their teachers. It's been difficult and frustrating for all involved. My family and many others down Forestry Drive moved into the neighborhood and into Baxter, assuming we would be receiving services that would surpass rural America. Yet, we seem to be the ones left out of expanding technology and amenities. I fear that by July of this year, we will be left without an option of internet because of CenturyLink's refusal to provide continued service and maintenance to their aging system of DSL. Cell phone service in our neighborhood is unreliable as well, so it's not even a viable option for us to purchase internet through Verizon, AT&T, or T-Mobile. I've looked into it. My family and those that live around us have no options. We are at the mercy of you, the City Council, to approve this proposal, and I implore you to consider what a no vote would mean for several members of your community. CTC is proposing to provide service to an otherwise underserviced area within the city limits through this request. One of the last areas within city limits that is not currently served by fiber broadband.
They appear to be doing so at a minimal cost to the city and county governments, yet their efforts will be a great benefit to several members of your community. I completely understand that your approval of this partnership with Crow Wing County and CTC means these funds will not be available to contribute to other priorities within the city. I respect that your decision is difficult as you weigh the benefit you'll give to 70 households against what other priorities you may have to surpass because of lack of funding. It's an arduous task, but I appeal to you as a proud citizen of Baxter to please strongly consider approval of this request. Provide those 70+ households in your community the right to reliable broadband that Governor Walz, like Judith had mentioned, and others have been necessary to function and meet the needs of our children. Thank you.
Could I, just before you leave, and you may or may not know this, but I'm gonna throw a number out, there's 250 houses out there, maybe. What are the rest of them?
Some areas of our neighborhood are serviced by Spectrum.
Okay.
We have contacted Spectrum. In fact, Mr. Ward's house is serviced by Spectrum, as is our neighbor, a stone's throw across our road. We have contacted Spectrum and asked them if they would extend to us. They have informed us that their line is as long as it can go. They have exceeded the length of the node that they have available for our neighborhood. They said in order for them to service us, especially on Riverwood Road and then the next cul-de-sac we are at the end, they would have to come to us about the same distance that CTC is proposing, but they need to come to us from the other side of 371, across 371 to service our area. They have no options to expand their network in our neighborhood.
So we see we have a packet, we see the diagram of where it would be coming down your street. And so if it comes down your street, picks up those 70 people, everybody else is okay.
I wouldn't be surprised if some individuals, it will become more of a competitive market. I could see some individuals that are with Spectrum could very well go to CTC if it's available. Right now, it's either CenturyLink or CTC via CenturyLink, or those that are serviced by Spectrum. And I know our neighbor, he is the last guy on the line, even says his Spectrum internet is spotty because he is the last guy on the line. They're taxing their lines to get service to everybody, so.
You mentioned there was supplemental service through the school district. What is that?
It was through Verizon, I believe. Isn't that good? It's a little Wi-Fi pop that you get, and even that is spotty. Like I said, my kids still had to, my son would be on if he knew he had a specific class that he had to meet face-to-face with a teacher, he'd be on, and then my 8-year-old couldn't be on because they just couldn't share the network. And on those days, my husband and I, we had to be home because our children were home, but we couldn't work from home. We had to take vacation days. So, it's a struggle.
So again, I'm just trying to visualize this. So this street with 70 grand will be covered. All our problems go away because everybody else is okay. Am I hearing that?
From what I understand, there are homes within our development that are serviced through Spectrum. What CTC is proposing is to hit those areas that Spectrum can't reach. They're not going down River Vista, I believe. The main line for Spectrum, I think, comes down Forest View, and it pretty much, the last pedestal is right outside Mr. Ward's house. And then they can service his house and then the next two, and that's it. And I don't even know if Spectrum services all the people along Forest View. I know there is actually an employee of CTC that lives along Forest View that doesn't have Spectrum internet. They're getting theirs through CTC's shared line with CenturyLink. So, and you can tell as you drive along, there are new pedestals which are showing where Spectrum has expanded their service. And then there's all the other ones that are falling apart, and then our little orange plastic bag at the end of our driveway. So, and we've had them come out multiple times. Much like Judith said, we had lots of times, even now, it almost seems like post-COVID, even though everybody's kind of back to work and back to school, our internet has been, we did a test on our upload and download speeds. I think our upload was less than 1 meg. I think we were like 0.3 meg for an upload speed, which is nothing. You can't upload anything. And our download speed, I think, was 3 meg. So We have some good friends that work for CTC, and he said that is crazy. We spoke to the people from Spectrum, they said, that's probably some of the worst internet. You're pretty much unserviced. We're getting enough to have some internet on our cell phone, or, you know, have some on an iPad.
That's how I belong to a couple of organizations, and I'm president of one and secretary of another, and I have to sit and do it on an iPhone.
Yep. It's difficult, it's really difficult, and more so for, I look at it from my kids' perspective, because like I said, there are no more snow days. Snow days are e-learning days, and they have to be online, they have to interact, otherwise they're considered absent. So if we know that our son can't be on at a specific time, or our daughter can't be on at a specific time, we have to contact their teachers and say they're not gonna be on, we can't get on with the internet, bear with us, and they've been really great, but I think it's been challenging.
Okay, well, thank you for sharing.
Yep, thank you.
Brad, have you had any further conversations with these organizations? Anything like this?
Any phone calls that I made to CenturyLink were not returned. Did stop at the Spectrum store here in town as the phone calls to corporate really didn't provide a response. And as Mrs. Durkis had indicated, I just provided addresses and said I was looking at purchasing, can I provide access or be provided service through Spectrum, and the Parkview Circle and Riverwood, that's Riverwood, right?
Correct.
Were the two areas in that Spectrum would not agree to provide service, or that they couldn't provide service.
Yeah, we're the last two roads on that Forest View stretch.
But that's the store, that's not a corporate response. I'm just, with having difficulty in getting a response, that's the length of the research I was able to do.
I guess what I was trying to get at personally is, we got one shot on these dollars, and we just got a ton of stuff looking at us. Yeah, I think the finance director is actually recommending about 700 to go to a water treatment plant, otherwise our rates are gonna go sky high. So first of all, how do we get the best bang for the buck for 9,000 people, not just 70 people? Understand that. But the other question I had, the reason I kept asking how many houses, because if everybody finds out that these 70 got taken care of, will the floodgates be open? I mean, I'm wondering how many more are out there that we won't have any money left, at that point in time. So I was trying to get to and probably nobody knows that, I guess, I don't know if how many others are out there that will say, well, hey, wait a minute now, they got it, and what about us? The money we want.
For sure, like I said, there are other homeowners that are serviced by Spectrum. Those that aren't, and from what we can understand from the individuals that we've spoken with, CTC, this is basically the main line that's gonna come in to service our neighborhood and get service to the far reaches of our neighborhood. Obviously, the line goes down Riverwood and it goes down Parkview Circle, and it'll do River Vista. The other kind of offshoots that are the earlier, like Fuchsia and Land O'Lakes, a lot of those areas are already serviced by Spectrum. Otherwise, from what we understand, if the main trunk line is there, CTC can service some of these other options, which is very similar to what we had heard from Spectrum when we asked. They said if we weren't maxed out on our node, absolutely we could come and service the rest of your road. We can't. We're tapped out. He said we're pushing the limits on the amount of broadband we're able to push through those lines to the people we are servicing. So I think what this proposal is it's looking at the people who are unserviced, and in some of the areas that maybe already have Spectrum would have the opportunity to potentially hook up to CTC with future dollars that they may allocate. Separate from this is to get that main line all the way down so every single house in that neighborhood would have the opportunity of broadband.
Thank you. Trevor?
I can talk back to 2019 when we did the North Forest View project. One of the biggest discussions when we were in there putting the water and sewer in was this discussion between CTC and Spectrum and CenturyLink and who's supplying what. And the problem is that nobody has a fiber optic line down there. CTC wanted to do it, but they didn't have the funding to do it. They actually put in, the conduit is in from County Road 48 down to River Vista, where Crowing Power stopped putting that brand new power line in at the end of the south end of the Forest View project. So the conduit, the empty conduit is in there for CTC to start the system in that entire neighborhood. So yes, what they're saying is that they would put this main trunk line in all the way down Forest View, and then what they're gonna probably do is build that fiber optic line off of that trunk line. So it's gonna spread throughout that entire area. The problem is, you know, CTC got pushed off of CenturyLink's copper lines, is what they were supplying some of the stuff with before. The copper lines are not anywhere capable of delivering the broadband that's needed. So that's why that fiber optic line from CTC going into this neighborhood probably is gonna spread to, it's probably gonna benefit that entire neighborhood all the way over to Scenic River, River Vista, Land O'Lakes, Fuchsia, all of that, Laredo, all of that area, because they'll be able to build off of that trunk line. And it is a better system because it will be fiber optic. It'll be the, you know, the newest and latest technology. So yes, it benefits on that very end, and we did hear that about Spectrum, and we had problems with Spectrum on that project. There's still, in fact, there's still some temporary lines on top of the ground laying out there. The orange lines laying on top of the ground on Campbell Trail is Spectrum. Spectrum, since there's been nobody locally to deal with anymore since Bud retired, it's been horrible, you know, trying to get something done with them. And during that project, we heard a lot of problems about broadband in that entire neighborhood. So I don't know if it helps the discussion, but just giving you the background that it was definitely a legitimate issue of that entire neighborhood when we were down there on just what we did on the north end. I didn't know about this on the south end, but it will benefit further down the road, you know, offshoot streets.
Well, not our job to bash companies here.
I think that, you know, CTC's proposal to hit the 70 homes that I think they have listed in their proposal, and even what Mr. Gould had mentioned in his letter, is the 70 people who are pretty much under service through CenturyLink or CTC via CenturyLink's lines. I think there's way more people within that neighborhood that will benefit from this $70,000 investment that have service, but to his point, it's not even fiber optic service, so they're more than likely gonna jump on the bandwagon with CTC if they get an opportunity.
I think, you know, the governor's saying it's a great idea, and he's right, and everybody thinks it's a great idea, but where's the grants, where's the funding? It's easy to talk about, you know, and, so anyway, what are your thoughts, Council?
Well, I've got some things written down here. I'll start out with just mentioning that having to make this decision isn't an easy one. We've got $900,000 came from the federal government, and we have more than $900,000 worth of things we can spend this money on, of course. So I want to start by being fully transparent. I live on River Vista Drive, but I am one of the people who has the luxury of being able to work from home, and I have been for the last 2.5 years because I have the access that was discussed here as part of this neighborhood. So I don't see this as directly affecting me, and I feel like I have some perspectives on this outside of living in the neighborhood that I want to kind of get out here. So I'm speaking about this particularly about those who don't have service right now. And I would say from my personal experience with my parents who are on CenturyLink in rural Morrison County, they don't have service. I want to start by just noting that broadband expansion is specifically called out in these ARPA dollars as something that is suggested, encouraged, and by basic face value appears to be something that is compliant with the federal use. So I don't see that as being something that's of particular concern to me. The other question here that kind of seems to have bubbled up is along the lines of, well, what about the others that are potentially unserved? And we're in the unfortunate position, we didn't decide where to put this. The county and CTC decided that for us, and the county has put us in the position of having to decide, we're either gonna put the 70,000 towards this, or this won't happen, is what I understand that letter to mean. So if this were something that the natural marketplace were providing solutions to, or this was just about watching Netflix, I'd probably be totally opposed to doing this. But this isn't a luxury anymore or an entertainment platform. This is basically a public utility. And without high-speed internet, I don't know how someone sells or buys a house. Definitely not to somebody from out of the area who's trying to remote work as a tech employee with a high wage, something like that. You're definitely not going to attract people to the those houses that are completely unserved. Not going to have high-paying professional jobs inside those houses for the most part nowadays, the way work is. So it's a tough deal, but I have to say I'm in favor of doing this simply because I know the frustration of people who are in the situation that these citizens talked about today. Is you're trying to talk on a landline phone that's run through the internet, but that internet is based on those copper wires that don't work the way you would want them to. It sounds like you're talking to people 14 countries away, and it's just terrible. So, you know, it's not the widest spread possible use of this money, but I look at the alternative here as noted in the next discussion. You know, I know we need to plow snow and have trucks and things like that, and that's a valid use, but that's also a depreciating asset that 10 years from now we'll be buying another one of those, and there's more, in my mind, economic value to allowing people to have the ability to work from home in these houses amongst many other uses that the internet, I haven't even touched on schooling and the fact that that's putting kids behind just having to learn from home, let alone without the internet. I'll just leave it at that. I think it's an economic driver in a lot of ways. No, it's not the perfect ideal use, but we're put in this position, and I would say I would put my slice into that project.
I would just add a little bit to what Zach said. He focused a lot on the professionals working from home, and me being a retired teacher, I think right away of the students and the families, and I don't want to read in the paper about students from the city of Baxter having to go sit in the parking lot at Hardee's to use their broadband. So as Zach said, it's tough to divide the dollars when there aren't enough dollars to divide, but for me, this would be a priority.
We've done that sitting in the parking lot, by the way.
Thought I saw you.
Any thoughts?
Oh yeah, I have thoughts. I have lots of thoughts. And I have to agree with everything that's been said so far. My issue is that we are taking public dollars and we are giving it to a private industry to charge you for a service. And we're only giving it to one of the potential suppliers in your neighborhood. And from a economic side of it, I'm having a real problem with that. And I don't think public dollars should benefit a private company, period. you know, it'd be one thing if this program were set up where we were actually owning that line, we were paying for that line, and, you know, we had participated with the original fiber loop around Baxter, but we participated in an ownership role. And part of what we got was service. And for us to hand the money over, they put it into infrastructure, and, you know, we can say it's a public utility, but it really isn't, because the city doesn't own it, the state doesn't own it, private industry owns it. And that's where I'm having a hard time with it. You know, I've been on the end of having good service, I understand that, and I understand your frustrations, and, you know, I worked through COVID off of alternate services, so, you know, I've been through it, so I'm having a problem with it, but it really comes down to it's public money going to a private industry and only supporting one of the private industries that furnishes that product, which maybe I'll work through, but that's my problem with it.
You bad, Brad?
Just for the sake of discussion, I'll toss out on the only one private industry having access to the money. I don't know how the county did the process, but I would assume that all of our local providers had equal opportunity to ask for the money that's currently being put on the table. So just one aspect of it, I fully respect the idea of not giving any private industry public dollars for any purpose. So if that's the case, by all means, but just wanted to toss that out there.
Yeah, just to clarify, the county did an RFP and provided them to all the local vendors. The Emily Telecommunications Co-op, Spectrum, CenturyLink, CTC, and I think there was one or two others I can't recall off the top of my head. But of those that responded, as I indicated, 14 responses or RFPs that were, or proposals that were submitted. I believe that there were 3 of the vendors that had provided responses to the county.
Based on what they were saying, it sounded like nobody wanted to touch it, so. So what, if we need a motion here, I think that Brad would.
Well, just looking for council to provide us an answer as to, do you want to provide contribution at $70,000? We would draft the proper documentation for council's formal consideration.
Okay. So consensus right now, then you come back with something?
Yeah.
Yes, yes,
I'm in favor of it.
and I would be a yes.
There might be talking, so 3 out of 5, you got it figured out.
Could you get back to us within a week maybe or something? Okay.
So I'll inform the county and we'll start getting the proper documentation in order.
And B, Brad, do you want to run that by us?
B will be Finance Director Casino.
Jeremy?
Your Honor and Counsel, proposed in your packet tonight is a resolution that's proposing to utilize up to $700,000 of the ARPA funds of the $914 million that were scheduled to receive in 2021 and in 2022 in equal entrenchments for the purpose of covering some of the water treatment plant costs. With the recent ruling, the final ruling that was provided by the U.S. Treasury, we do have the ability to indicate what's called a standard allowance that allows smaller cities or can use smaller governments to allocate up to $10 million, which in our case would be the full $914,000 towards a standard allowance, giving us greater flexibility in the use of those funds as long as it's for government services. What I'm proposing, I guess, is in the resolution is to utilize up to $700,000 for some of the costs that we incurred in 2021 for the water treatment plant project, as well as the other various projects, with the idea that it's really kind of shoring up the water fund, knowing that we've had a significant amount of investments that we've made in the last year between the water treatment plant as well as the interconnect building in the city of Brainerd, and then also just knowing that we've had some significant water charges with the city of Brainerd in that interim as we've had to provide water. And the real purpose of that, with the federal government providing that $10 million limit, is they're just kind of looking at a floor for smaller units of government without having to go through a lot of administrative paperwork and the grant reporting requirements for the purpose of realizing that COVID has caused strains on local units of government, and that this really kind of helps local units of governments for those that receive a smaller amount to be able to utilize those funds without a significant burden administratively. So what we'd be proposing to do is utilize at least $700,000 of the initial allocation towards the water plant project, and then certainly the balance would be determined at a council at a future date. We do have the luxury of time, I guess, with this round of grant funding versus what we did with the CRF funds, CARES funds back in 2020. In that case, we only had about 3 or 4 month window to spend the proceeds that we received then. In this case, we have until December 31st of 2024 to encumber the funds and actually spend them by December 31st of 2026. So this would at least help shore up some of the water fund project costs. I guess if there's questions, I'm certainly able to hopefully answer those. But
I think the packet was very well stated that you're looking for something from us on this.
looking for adoption of the resolution, I guess. What will allow us to do is we kind of finalize that with our audit coming up in the next month. We'll be able to kind of capture those funds back into 2021. We're still working with the auditors a little bit more on that, on some clarification on how that exactly works, but we're proposing to kind of document that through payroll expenditures, which are certainly allowed expenditure under the ARPA application, but we're kind of looking at some of the requirements, I guess, for that in the meantime. If there's any major changes, we'll certainly bring that back to the council, but kind of looking to allocate that back into 2021. That does help us a little bit further with the single audit issue too, because we will have $750,000 of federal funds in 2021, so that alleviates the need to do some additional audit procedures and additional costs associated with that. It's not to say that the auditors still will be auditing that and making sure that we spend the funds appropriately. It's just that we won't have to go through significant more testing that we would do when city receives more than $750,000 in a single year.
Question, Jeremy? Motion to approve that resolution.
I'll make a motion to approve.
Motion by Lisa.
Second.
Second by Tim. Any further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you.
And move to C, denial of special event permit application for Jack and Brad.
Included in Exhibit 1 is a letter from Jack Pine Brewery owner Patrick Sundberg, who is requesting 12 special events to happen at the subject property. According to the applications, Mr. Sundberg is seeking to utilize the outdoor area outside of the approved outdoor seating area to hold music, concert, or events every Friday between Memorial Day to Labor Day. Title 5, Section 7 of the City Code does give the city permission to consider the issuance of special event permits to a business, organization, or individual that is looking to host a special event that would require use of special services, the use of public right-of-way, or a temporary exemption from compliance with applicable state or local and state regulations, provided that they do not threaten the health, safety, and welfare of residents and visitors to the city. Earlier this year, the applicant did receive four special event permits that were administratively approved that will be held in 2022. City staff did not review or administratively review the remaining 12 applications, the recently submitted 12 applications due to state and local regulations that are outlined in the RCA that I'll briefly highlight here in a moment. As council will recall, back at the beginning of COVID, the city adopted resolutions to temporarily suspend local regulations to assist bars, restaurants, and like businesses to allow them to conduct their businesses outdoors and to comply with occupancy limitations that were implemented by the state. With the expiration of the governor's executive orders that occurred on July 1st, the city council set October 1st, 2021 as the date that the temporary suspensions would expire and require all businesses to once again comply with the applicable local regulations or obtain approvals necessary to retain those temporary improvements and make them permanent. Originally approved to establish a temporary outdoor area in the parking lot, Jack Pine sought and received permission to relocate that patio area into the grass area south of the building. Back in spring of last year, Mr. Sundberg began to explore the possibility of making the temporary patio permanent. At the conclusion of that process, it was determined that Mr. Sundberg would need to address the stage and platform that was constructed, make improvements to his restroom facilities, and address parking requirements that were necessary in order to fully utilize that outdoor area that was established during COVID. On October 18th, staff approved a fence and building permit to Jack Pine Brewery for a smaller patio expansion. A copy of that is included as Exhibit 3. This revised or approved plan complied with the building code regulations and would not trigger the need for restroom facilities or address the parking. Subsequently thereafter, the council did revise Jack Pine's liquor license to include that expanded patio extension at its October 19th meeting. The spirit and intent of the special use permit provisions in the city code is to support businesses and organizations with the opportunity to host an occasional event that is separate from their normal daily business without having to make permanent improvements, but yet still assuring that the health and safety of all participants are met. It's under this premise that city staff administratively approved the 4 permits that I previously mentioned, which were for Jack Pine's Memorial Day, 4th of July, Labor Day, and Jacktoberfest events. Staff views the request for the additional 12 as an attempt to utilize the non-permitted outdoor open space without having to make the necessary improvements for the property to comply with the state building code, ADA accessibility, and local zoning regulations. And it should be noted that the applicant does have the ability to avoid the need of a special event permit by moving the proposed activities indoors or within the approved patio area, again, Exhibit 3, or by making the necessary permanent improvements in order to properly utilize the entire outdoor patio, or the outdoor open space as is being requested for the 12 events. Based on these factors, staff is recommending denial of the 12 applications that have been submitted. At this time, I'll entertain any questions that the council may have. I do want to note that Mr. Sundberg is in attendance and is here to answer any questions that you may have.
Council, any questions of Brad? I think our packets were fairly complete. Anything you want to add, Patrick?
No, I don't really want to add a whole lot, but yeah, Mr. Mayor, members of the council, thanks for taking this up. Brad did a wonderful job of summarizing kind of the history of what we've got going on, so I'm not going to delve into that. I think a number of you have really seen how well the city has worked with, retail or with hospitality in this city, allowing outdoor spaces. And we ended up changing our outdoor space a couple times, just because we were flexing with what we were able to do and what we could do, and what our customers wanted. We kind of inadvertently found out that our outdoor space is just a phenomenal venue for live music, and we really took advantage of that. Last year in the summer, at a time where people were really itching for something to do. There was all the activities had been canceled for a year and a half. So that was kind of one of the bright sides of COVID is we kind of fell into something that we think is really special. We don't know how far that's gonna go. So I'm not to the point where, you know, the business isn't to the point where we can build out additional bathrooms and really go that far. So my main question would be, you know, I got an answer from Brad that the city staff was comfortable with four special event permits, which covers our 4 busiest days of the year. Memorial Day weekend, or 4 busiest weekends, Memorial Day weekend, Labor Day weekend, 4th of July, and then we also have a fall festival, Jacktoberfest. So that covers those days, which is 12 days out of the 365 days of our operation, which accounts for about 3.3%. This additional request is for an additional 12 days for music every Friday. We don't expect to be busy. You know, we're bringing in local artists on this one, and we're not bringing in big bands or anything like that. But it is a really cool space to be able to feature local music at. And you know, in the case of, you know, in prior, you know, this past year when we were able to do that, what we found out was, you know, we were even at a third of our rated capacity during those events. You know, if there was music outside, people were there. If it's raining, everybody's inside. So I understand that there's concerns about, you know, capacity and parking and bathrooms and, you know, and whatnot. In this experience, I'm just asking for maybe another season to test the waters to see if it's worthwhile or not. You know, I understand that it is still a temporary, or it's a special event permit, but I'm already approved for 12 days. I'm asking for another 12, and that's only 6.6% of my total operational days for the year. So that's kind of my request. It's I'm kind of looking for that line. Where's that line for special events? And what can we go? I mean, we've rolled with so many different challenges throughout the years. So I'm sure a lot of you are very well aware of. I understand that, you know, Jack Pine has been a lot of firsts for the city.
I just interrupt you. Thanks for coming back.
Thank you.
Bringing us up to date there. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I mean, Jack Pine has certainly had a number of firsts with the city, and I know that's been a challenge, because a lot of the rules we don't fit too many molds very well, so we're trying to create something new for the area. But ultimately, we'll roll with whatever we can, because that's what we do, but that's my request. Do you have any questions? Comments?
I don't necessarily have questions, but comments. I'm more than a little bit familiar with Jack Pine. We have been fans of Jack Pine and supporters of Jack Pine back to when you were making it in your garage with community and we're very proud of you and how much you've grown and how much you do attract to the city of Baxter. So I feel I'm kind of in a very difficult situation because I have a connection to the place. But my question, I guess I do have one. Is 12 the magic number? If Patrick were to ask for less than 12 special event permits in addition to the 4 that were already approved?
Yeah.
Or is it just a hard no on?
It was an internal discussion, to be honest with you, and we landed at 4. That's where I indicated to Patrick that that's where we're comfortable. And Patrick has heard this 100 times, and is you don't build church for Easter Sunday Mass, you build it for a normal Sunday Mass. And each time that you have a Sunday Mass, you know, a larger Mass or a special event, your facilities need to be cognizant of that. And so, in the context of the state building code and things of that nature, there's not a black and white. It's trying to find that spot. As a staff, that's where we're comfortable with. And understand this is, you know, we understand that Patrick has parking arrangements with neighbors, special event permit. Addresses that on the 1 or 2 occasions where you're going to be inconvenienced or things of that nature. But as you add more events, it's becoming more of your standard operating procedure or standard business practice that gets you out of that normal category of special. and that's where we drew the line, or established the line.
So he's approved for 4,
Correct.
but those 4 translated to 12 days, correct?
Yeah, the special events were for the weekend. Yeah, for
Okay.
3 days.
Okay.
It was 2 or 3 days in each one. I don't recall offhand.
Does our special event permit allow for, since it is a temporary event, does it allow for temporary facilities? Because I know in other special events I've been involved in, we've furnished temporary facilities to handle the overflow, so to speak.
Part of the 4 original temporary permit, or temporary event permits, I haven't been, it hasn't been requested of me to provide other facilities, other than parking.
Well, I know that's part of the issue, is that at what point does it become standard practice as opposed to something special? And if you have a season of special events, then do you also then deal with additional temporary facilities to handle that? And I don't know if our permit even addresses that side of it. The other thought I had when we originally heard this, maybe a year ago, when you were going through some of the original exploration, was that, you know, like you say, on a lot of these events, you're only a third full, but you want that third outside in a spot that's not currently a facility, so to speak. You know, is there justification or a way to say taking a third of your seating inside, technically, and moving it to the outside, you know, closing off an area and say, okay, if we're not seated here and this section is closed, then the people that are here don't exceed that number of your existing facilities.
We did work with that, because I brought in our architect to kind of work through occupancy and whatnot, you know, last summer while we were working through this, and that was seen as not acceptable.
It seemed what?
It was seen as not acceptable, because we tried to, like.
By you or by?
By the city.
By the city.
Yep. By trying to basically put the onus on the business owner to maintain occupancy, that wasn't allowed. We thought of it, we tried.
Kind of hard to kick people off, though.
Well, we have a portion of the tap room we can close off completely, and we do. We've got a private rental room that we can close off from time to time. But that's, you know, 50 seats.
What's your total capacity?
The what?
What's your total capacity of seats right now, inside?
I think it's close to I think total is about 300. I think it's 312 total indoor and outdoor. And we were able to shuffle a few things around as far as like our actual use, because there were some areas that were calculated at a higher density than what we're actually using them as. We had a lot of, there were a portion of places that were calculated as standing room only, and we don't really have that space. So we were able to flex a few things around just to get the outdoor lawn space that we currently have fenced in. So 310 is our total.
Inside and out?
Yeah.
Other thoughts or questions?
I don't have any questions, but I have to.
Thoughts?
I appreciate your business, and, you know, I think what you do for town is great, and I'm glad that people enjoy the facility. So this part of it is gonna have nothing to do with the business. I apologize.
I can easily separate it.
All right,
That's fine.
all right. Here's my issue here is that, if the council agrees that these are what our code would define as a special event, I'm not personally gonna stand in the way. I just don't think I don't think the special event process and the special event code says anything about what this is. So when I read the special event code, I read, if this event is held wholly on private property, it must require the use of special services. In the code, that says special services basically are police, fire, city services of some kind, city equipment, city staff, blocking streets, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So I personally don't see, I think what happened here was that form that gets filled out doesn't match the code, and it just kind of slipped through, and here we are. If the rest of the council thinks of this as a special event, I would also say, I don't think we have the ability or authority to deny a special event based on number, based on what I read in the code. Because what I see is a list of reasons we may deny an application for a special event, and that would also mean if we may deny for these listed reasons, in my mind, we may not deny for some other reason that's not on the list. And in short, those reasons are the applicant lied on the application. I don't think that's the case here, or a list of reasons that generally tie to the fact that the event would use too many of those listed city special services like police, fire, closing of streets, etc. So if we believe this is a special event, my opinion is we can't say no, but I don't think the special event ordinance actually says that this is a special event.
That's the way I read it too. And again, Patrick, I've told you before, we're proud of you, and that in fact, you brought us along with brewery knowledge from the garage to it the other day. And so.
And this decision won't impact my opinion of that either. I'm really proud of what we've done and what we've been able to do. And like I said before, I know I've certainly challenged many things along my way, but it's I'm doing something that hasn't been done in town before, and it's like, so I understand that there's definitely some challenges with that, and I appreciate that. I'm gonna give kudos. This second round of the new building went just swimmingly compared to the first round. I'm just gonna say that, and it's all because of the staff that worked here. They did an awesome job of working through what we did at Jack Pine. So,
Well, we don't mind being challenged, but we just throttle back a little bit. You've done a great job. I don't really see that it meets the same requirement as a special event either. It's, if you're gonna do it every single weekend, it becomes SOP. I mean, that's just kind of the way the business is at that point. I think it does, for lack of better terminology, it kind of flies in the face of the ordinance in the first place. I'd like to see it get established and figured out, and I realize that all costs money, and I look forward to the day where that can happen, and we'll only see you at leisurable times. But I have to agree with Zach, I think, on this one, and apologize to you, I guess.
Just to further that discussion, I think the whole special event ordinance as well as the application should be completely relooked at, because I think this sounds like a special event, but I don't think that the ordinance says what most people believe special event truly means in the sense that how it's been applied. And I guess I'm not even opposed to the idea of approving a certain number, but I guess I don't think that the words on the paper say what
special events are approved. And this motion denials for 12 additional days.
Correct. Correct that.
Okay.
Staff's recommendation is based on the 12 applications that we received after the approval of the board. So this is merely just the 12 that were submitted on March 18th or whatever day it was.
The four were administratively approved by you, is that correct?
Four administrative approved are not part of this
So
recommendation.
they're a done deal.
Okay, just to be clear.
Yeah.
Comments on that too?
Sure.
So, and the four, because we are, because it is a bigger weekend, much bigger weekend for us, we've got a lot more involved with those as far as parking monitors, you know, a food truck placement in front of the building, relocation of some handicap spots. So there was the big four, because we've got bigger weekends, we've got a lot more that goes into those. I don't think I may have put porta potties in there, as part of the first four, but I'm not entirely sure, that we would provide that. So there's, the four big ones, initial ones, were because we truly did need some of the space, because it's, you know, we are bringing in, more music, and it is more of a big event. The following 12 are just kind of smaller outdoor music, so.
Thanks for the clarification. Looking for a motion.
Can I just ask one question? Maybe this is a moot point. So if these 12 are denied, is this a done deal then, or is there an opportunity for Patrick or whomever to come back and apply for four more? Or is it just, we decide now, and that's it?
I will say, unless there's feedback from the council, I wouldn't come back.
Hearing none, I will make that motion.
I'll second.
Motion by Olson, second by Talbot. Any further discussion? Favor say aye.
Aye.
All same sign, motion carries. Thank you.
What was it?
Denied.
Yeah.
The motion was for denial, yeah.
Okay, thank you.
And as I've heard from Councilmember Tabbitt and Mayor Olson, you want us to look at setting a work session to talk about the special event ordinance.
That'd be my opinion. In reading that application form,
Okay.
I think we need the two to match better.
We'll work on setting up.
We may not need a 13-page application like I've seen in the past.
We'll work on getting, future work sessions set for that. Thank you.
Okay, council comments, Connie?
I have none.
Zach?
Talked plenty tonight, I guess I'll add a little bit more. I just wanted to note, I was reading the long-range planning minutes, and they noted in there that the council is currently asking for a comp plan. And there was some discussion about planning, and I just, as it tied into this having ARPA funding, I wanted to throw out there that one of the purposes of the ARPA funding was to fight the pandemic and build a strong and resilient recovery by making long-term growth and opportunity investments. And that just made me think that, you know, economic development and planning and zoning and finding ways we can encourage more good businesses in town and good things to happen with development would maybe be a good use of the other little slice. You know, I've already spoken for what I think of that broadband thing, but there's another 130 in there that I just plant the seed that maybe we consider some sort of economic development activity with that.
Thank you, Mark.
Well, I hope I can say, look out for motorcycles this weekend. Hopefully the weather's nice.
I guess I do have one thing I'd like to promote.
Get your snow tires on.
Yeah.
You may or may not be aware that Habitat for Humanity is a very important organization in our community, And there is a large fundraising event this Thursday day after tomorrow called Dancing with the Stars. So if any of you are
Connie,
interested in
do you know
supporting
someone who's
Habitat,
dancing?
I think my husband might be. No, but actually it's a wonderful organization and it's a fun event. So if anyone is interested in supporting someone by the name of Licio, it would be wonderful.
Yeah, I think, are you done with your motorcycle story?
Oh, yeah. Short and sweet.
It's a weekly thing, I just want to make it. I just got a couple of quick things. In the past 3 or 4 weeks, we've hosted 2 different sessions at the Arboretum with our community members. We brought, because of the property that we have now accumulated, 800, 900 acres, whatever it is down the southwest, we wanted input as to what that should look like, what we should be doing with it. So the first group we brought in were the neighbors that immediately abutted that property, and then the second meeting was wide open for everybody in the city. And I just want to compliment staff, what a great job you guys did putting that together. We had basically a full house both nights, and some of your council members were in and out, 1 or 2 of those get-togethers too. But it was really refreshing to hear the comments, and in some cases it was business people, it was people that had potential vested interest in what might happen down there too. And started out with a little bit of an overview, and then the typical open house with the boards, and people could make their comments and whatnot, and man, they stayed. There was a lot of interest. But what I was going to say is that what was so refreshing was to hear the comments from the people that, nobody ever asks us what we care about. And so we just really appreciated being invited. They said, we just assumed you bought the land, you're going to do whatever you want. And I said, we're not that brave. We wanted to get input. And so they were very appreciative of it. They were very appreciative of the work that you guys, Josh, you and your group put into that. It went over so well. And I think they all felt like they were a party to that. And we got a lot of good ideas from them too that will be incorporated in the final briefing to the whole city. So I appreciate that. I appreciate you guys, and I appreciate the community for showing up, because you don't have anything if people don't show up, and they did. So it was great. City Administrator.
Mayor, I would like to cede my time to SEH. As you know, we had another item on the work session. We ran out of time. We do need to get some direction from the council or input from the council related to a MnDOT response letter for their 210 project on the east end of town. So with that, I'll turn it over to SEH to provide council with a quick summary of their findings and the draft letter they've prepared for us.
Thanks for coming.
Thank you so much.
Thanks for your input.
I could probably provide a quick summary of the project. As you know, MnDOT is doing in 2024, 2025, doing improvements throughout the city of Brainerd, and the west end of that project is at Baxter Drive intersection. They have submitted the conceptual layout design and asked for public comment, or comment back from the local units of government. And obviously we play a role in that because Baxter Drive intersection, as well as Fairview and others. So we've taken that response, we've had several meetings with MnDOT, asked SEH to review the proposed improvements and to provide us with recommendations. I think what you'll hear is that there's two primary items that we want to discuss. Is first and foremost, along 210, they have I believe it's a 6-foot sidewalk that they have. Obviously, based upon the equipment that we have, we don't, or I should say, setback, it's the responsibility of the local government to maintain and clear that. Being that we have difficulty in maintaining it, we requested that to be converted into a trail, so as it connects to what we've already established on Baxter Drive heading north and then south to the Paul Bunyan Trail. The other component is they were showing sidewalk being established on the south side of 210. We're suggesting or recommending that we are not in favor of that. The other, the non-related, pedestrian movement that we want to talk about as well is the Fairview intersection there, the frontage road on the very west end, the empty lot. As you know, as we relate to other projects that we're working on, such as Whiskey Creek, there is runoff off of the highway system that needs to be collected and treated before being discharged. We believe that that empty lot is something that they should explore, and in exploring that, it may lead to the need for closure of the intersection there. Looking to get feedback from the council as to what your thoughts are on that, or if we should step aside from requesting or asking them to take a deeper dive into the stormwater retention and stormwater management of the system. So I'm sorry, I probably stole half your thunder.
You covered it really well. So this first page is just kind of the basics of what MnDOT's proposing. They're going to replace the signal at Baxter Drive so that they can bring it up to code, and then redo all the crosswalks and the ped ramps and the push buttons to bring those up to ADA compliance. Then they're going to add an 8-foot sidewalk at the back of the curb on the north and south side of 210. And that will actually run all the way through their whole project area. But this is the only part in Baxter. And then, as Brad said, the Fairview road, frontage road here, they're going to replace that access. So no access change there.
So that 8-foot sidewalk will go all the way through Brainerd?
Yes. I believe it stops right around 5th Avenue Northeast, so right before the mall.
Yeah.
So that's where it comes to today, is right before the mall.
I think so. Yeah.
On the north side is current, it's the south
Yeah,
side.
yeah, the south side is nothing. And there's a back on both sides. Just trying to go to the next page. There we go. So that's for the comments from the city. The first one is just that the signal to include battery backup keeps the signal operational during power outages. I've talked with our signal design guy at SEH, and he said that's pretty much MnDOT standard these days. They don't put a lot of signals in without that, especially on a road like this, where it's pretty vital to not have it go to an always stop essentially during any time of day.
The only thing to be noted, Justin, though, is when they put in the battery backup, it's up to the local unit of government to switch the batteries out every 2 or 3 years, so it becomes part of our our street maintenance costs, so it adds to our budget. The council should be aware of that.
And then on the north side, city would request, MnDOT to build a 10-foot trail with a 5-foot buffer. As Brad mentioned, there's really no way for the city right now to maintain an 8-foot sidewalk with their current equipment during the winter. And MnDOT does not typically, I don't think they ever do any winter maintenance on sidewalks.
No,
Right?
they don't do any maintenance period, winter or summer on sidewalks. It's left up to the local unit of government.
Yep. And there's no ordinance to have landowners do any of that for themselves. For that reason, the city would request a 10 or 12-foot trail with a 5-foot buffer. That 10 or 12-foot trail is consistent with what's out there in the rest of the city, and that 5-foot buffer is also consistent with the rest of the city, but provides space between the road and the trail to store snow, so that MnDOT isn't taking snow off the road, putting it on the trail, but then has to be cleared off several times a day during the winter. On the south side, the city would request removing that sidewalk to save for cost savings for the city and MnDOT on that. It would also allow you to remove some push buttons, some head ramps, just overall reduce the cost of the city when doing this. The last comment is on Fairview Road access. The city would request that it's closed, and they've talked with MnDOT before and requested that they purchase the vacant lot just north of this opening to use for stormwater. And then you would either cul-de-sac Fairview Road or connect to the north to provide access to Baxter Drive.
But if they don't, Josh, that was car wash wanted to buy that lot, right? Can't tell it's garbled up there, but.
Yeah,
Tommy, how will they get out?
we've had some, yes, there was interest in that. That's gone away.
So,
Yeah.
but if MnDOT doesn't buy it, use it, that lot is going to be reduced in value if they can't get out.
And understand that's the premise of what we talk about internally as staff is that we weren't supportive of closure of Fairview if not for the MnDOT acquisition of that for stormwater purposes.
Brad, I mean, I know MnDOT actually approached the city about closing that access, in initial meetings.
And that's all I have. If anyone has any other questions.
So as indicated, we're at the point of providing feedback to MnDOT. Included in your, in the work session on RCA was a draft letter from SEH that would ultimately be signed by the mayor and myself, and looking and wanted to reach consensus with the council as giving the okay for us to submit that letter. I think it's pretty self-explanatory. I think the big question is looking for your feedback in regards to Fairview access, and if you concur with staff, particularly with that particular item.
I gotta think this over, because when I come out with maybe a Whopper, I gotta figure out how to get back out of it.
You just turn left to say right.
I can't turn left there.
Well, that's being considered, I'll just toss a very minor point out that I don't really know why we're offering that we'd like a 12-foot trail. That's just more cost and more to plow. I'd go with 10 personally.
Feedback we're looking for. Any other?
Do you agree with the way that staff approached about the sidewalks? I mean, we don't have a sidewalk ordinance in our city. And when MnDOT goes through and puts those sidewalks in, then it's up to the local jurisdiction, to take over maintenance of them. where most cities then put it back to the business owners or landowners out in front of that sidewalk system to maintain them throughout the winter, so taking the sidewalks out on both the north and south side, but do we put a trail connection in, you know, back on that north side and get that 5-foot boulevard in there?
What's our trail map say?
Our trail map has it in there as a connection, because of course it connects to Brainerd's sidewalk system right now in front of Burger King. We went against it back when the 210 was built and the bridge was pulled out, the Vivo put in. That was the comment then, is not to put the sidewalk in on the south side, but they still put it in on the north side, even though city council really didn't want it on the north side then either. They felt that, you know, a sidewalk needed to go on one side or the other 20 years ago. But we've been kind of going back and forth with MnDOT for over 20 years about sidewalks, because they're trying to get the connection points, you know, for everybody to be able to get around the city. Well, even in their deal, in their own classification, we're not an urban city corridor. We're rural corridors on 371 and 210. We're not urban with curb and gutter like most other cities that have trunk highways running.
Is this gonna be curb and gutter?
This is all curb and gutter. Yeah.
It's not now, though, is it? Trevor, is it currently curb and gutter?
Yes,
It's curb and
yeah,
gutter.
it runs the curb and gutter up to about Valvoline on the south side, and a little bit further up to about Conservation on the north side, and the west of Baxter
It starts
Drive.
to taper off after Pizza Hut.
Yeah.
If I could, Mayor Council, when you look at the pedestrian and bike and pedestrian system and connectivity, of course, there's sidewalks in the Brainerd portions on both sides, but when you look at Baxter, specifically Baxter Drive, on the west side of that intersection, you kind of sort of see it on this side, on this west side. When we read it, Baxter Drive, there's a trail that does go north up to the point of the corner of the mall, and also is the front of the mall, if you will, from a connectivity perspective. And then on the south side, we did ask for Casey's to connect a sidewalk on their own property out to the south, which connects to the Albany Trail. So there's obviously there's a sidewalk here now, but there isn't one to the south. But I just wanted to speak to some of those other connecting points in the area.
This is a 10-foot wide concrete trail on Baxter Drive that was built with the project 20 years ago. That is a 10-foot wide concrete trail connection from 210 to the Paul Bunyan Trail. And on the north side and the west side of Baxter Drive is a 10-foot wide bituminous trail. So that is our trail system, is on the west side of Baxter Drive. The question is do we want any other connections into Brainerd besides the Paul Bunyan Trail? And we were getting the feedback from MnDOT that they probably will fight against losing both sidewalks on both sides, but the local staff that's working on the project felt that the 10-foot wide trail on the north side might be a good compromise and get rid of the two sidewalks.
I would think that's great money.
So then it kind of comes down to, do we just leave the access of Fairview the way it is, like it's been for 40 years, or is it time to address it? I don't think there's any big safety issue. Or Jim's not here tonight, but we do have a police officer representing.
Well, no, we don't have a police officer, we have the assistant.
Oh, she has the assistant.
Representing us tonight.
Have there been accidents there? That would be my question.
You know, is it a safety concern when it's right there in the right turn lane? You know, it's been there for a long time.
Well, yeah, my only concern is if they buy that lot, it's fine, they can go. But if they don't, then that's a viable lot for commercial development that the buyer's gonna wanna be able to get out onto the highway, so never mind.
Because one of the one, concept that was looked at, 1999, was to make that frontage road go back to the bank and come out to Baxter Drive, where that access point is between on the mall property. That was looked at, was to do a bulk road and disconnect this when 210 was redone the last time. So, but of course, it's cost, and I'm sure that MnDOT doesn't want to spend the money on the right-of-way acquisition and take care of realigning it once and for all.
Well, that was the premise, as we were dealing with Whiskey Creek and knowing that MnDOT its older sections of its highway system may or may not have stormwater facilities that are adequate for the runoff that's coming off of their highway system. We're dealing with them with Whiskey Creek project. We just asked is you look at it from a stormwater standpoint, and if it makes sense, purchase it. But I think that's, at least from my standpoint, from a staff standpoint, is indicating is the closure of Fairview would be tied to them acquiring that for stormwater purposes, not just to close it for sake.
So where does that, if that's curb and gutter right now, where does that water go?
Right now it goes back to the stormwater pond. It goes back to the stormwater pond on the south side of 210, but on the east side of the Paul Bunyan Trail right by the Bevo. There's a big pond down below the hill.
So it's piped, even though the water's
Yep.
right down towards Burger King,
It's piped back to the,
like that.
yep. The breaking point is somewhere in here because then it goes into Brainerd. And that's when they took it down the side street back to Wells Fargo and went down onto the county road and went down by the river and realigned that storm sewer pipe so it wasn't going directly to the Mississippi River. Before 23 years ago, it went directly to the Mississippi River in Brainerd.
Okay.
So other than changing from 10 to or 12 to make it 10, is there any other? I believe I'm seeing the shaking of heads, there's a consensus and we will be able to submit the letter to MnDOT. If that's the case, then I believe we've accomplished what we were setting forth in the work session, unless anything else.
No, otherwise, the other thing we could add to this memo would be that if they're not gonna buy that property, that we'd like that access to remain open. Right now, it's a little,
Only better.
doesn't say that.
100%.